there's things that appear good. Satan, when he tempted Adam and Eve, he used good words. We know in the last days that the end will have to be cut short because even the elect will be deceived. So we have to be very careful. We have to test all spirits. But Jesus doesn't use that side of things. He uses the Spirit of God. He uses goodness, a good spirit, in everything he works with. And so, they accused him, and they also some wanted to see a sign that he was the Son of God. Give us a sign. But he said, I won't give you a sign. But he did say that any kingdom divided against itself shall not stand. So if Satan is divided against his own, one day it'll all fall. And it's true. By putting bad spirits in, they can't stand, they can't win in the long run. They're all going to be eroded down to nothing. What will prevail in the long run is goodness. Jesus will have victory over all things. Satan cannot stand. And Jesus goes on in verse 21, says, when a strong man armed keepeth his palace, his goods are in peace. But when a stronger than he shall come along and overcome him, he taketh all and spoils all of him. And Jesus goes on to speak about even being able to bind Satan up. Jesus is stronger than the devil. And Jesus can actually tie him up. And he uses all the fruits of the Spirit to literally, spiritually tie up demons, tie up and bind all these unclean spirits. And so when you use love, gentleness, meekness, kindness, all these fruits of the Spirit, picture in your mind that you're actually binding up evil. You actually are using that kind of power of God. Actually, God is doing the binding. But you are, through your prayer and your faith, getting him to tie up Satan. For greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. God is in us, and he is great. If his Spirit dwells in us, he is greater than anything that Satan can do. That same Spirit was given to the disciples. On the day of Pentecost, Jesus told all the disciples to wait. And they were standing there, and the Spirit of God came down them, and they rested on them. They could see fiery, cloven tongues come down. And when the Spirit came upon those men, they spoke in tongues. And others who were present could hear in their own language from their place of birth. So this speaking of tongues was actually in the original languages of other people that were present. In other words, if it happened today, that Spirit could speak in Italian, could speak in Greek, could speak in Chinese, could speak in Russian, English, Spanish, French. The Spirit is not a spirit of confusion. All things that are confusion are of the devil. As we studied this morning, everything God does is in order. The Spirit is a spirit of clarity, clearness, truthfulness. In God there is no shadow of turning. The Spirit is a spirit of truth. If you look up in the Bible, you go to concordance and you look up Spirit and truth together, you'll get many references. And you'll see that the Spirit of God is the spirit of truth. And that's another way we can discern the Spirit. Test the Spirit. It must be truthful in all things. It can't be half true. if you're in a place and it's 80% true, you're not in the right place. It has to be 100% true. I'm not speaking of the individual people, because we're all subject to error individually, but the spirit, the body as a whole, the organization, the church, the house of God, must stand only on truth. There can be no error. There's no room for error in God's Spirit. No shadow of turning with God. In the study we had this morning, he organized everything. If the Kohites, who were given the responsibility of cleaning the vessels, if they were to touch the holy things, they would die. That is very exact instruction. When they were to carry the Ark of the Covenant, there were certain men who were given the responsibility to cover this Ark. The others were not to touch it. They ran staves, holes through the Ark carrier, and posts through it. And the men carried so they would not touch the Ark, because it was deadly to touch the Ark. One time when David was merrily rejoicing and almost in a crazy state, David was naked, dancing, singing. He was in this sort of hyper spirit, you might want to say. And here's a person who loved God greatly. He was just so excited because, oh great, the Ark of the Covenant, we're bringing it to Jerusalem. And as the Ark was going over the river, it moved to the side. It looked like it was going to topple, and one of the men, in good intention, steadied it with his hand, and he died instantly. The Spirit of God is the Spirit of truth. There is no shadow of turning. And I'm not trying to be heavy here. All I'm saying is we have to discern and understand between truth and error. God is merciful. That man disobeyed, but I'm sure God will read his heart and say, he's coming into my kingdom. That's my opinion. I may be wrong, but I just feel God has that kind of mercy. Maybe that man had things wrong all his life. I don't know. Maybe that was just a judgment for him. But if he hearkened to the word of the Lord, he would not have put his hand out on the earth. Right? Let us hearken to the word of the Lord. And let us be exact and not in the wrong place. So the Spirit came upon these men. They didn't get like David and get all kind of wild and speak an unknown tongue that nobody could understand, that Paul refers to. Because tongues were not for confusion. Tongues were for clarification, for translation. Tongues were there to bring people into the gospel so that Italians, Greeks, Germans could all hear this wonderful story that Jesus gave his life. Yes. And so these men had the Spirit of light on them. And from then on, the apostles went and preached Jesus. And they were able to cast out devils and all these things.